everybody, Becky Lynn Rickman here, and this is episode 3 of A Novel Life, an AutobiVLOGraphy of me, and I am losing my voice. I've got a little bit, I think, just seasonal allergies because spring is supposedly coming. Could have fooled me, but I am sitting in what is now, soon to be not, my bedroom, because I'm about to go out on the road in my RV. But as you can see, this is, if you look behind me, this is my old oak writing desk, and I've had it for, oh gosh, probably 20 years. And then my wall back here of my family, ooh, I don't know if you can see, but all my kids and grandkids. This is my inspirational wall. And my beautiful picture mirror back there. And tonight is a special night. As you can see, you can tell how happy I am if I put in my little clip-in hair extensions and my flowers. That means I'm really, really happy. And I am. I am in a better headspace than I think I've ever been in my life. I'm just so, just really, really well and really happy. And, which is why I decided that even though it's late, it is, well, it's not that late, it's 8:25, which is really early for me, but I decided to go ahead and do my episode on traumas, and I feel like it's almost unnecessary. I had planned this big trip in my RV where I was going to go to each of the places that I'd ever lived this summer and kind of close the door on each of the traumas, but I'll be honest with you, it's like they never happened right now. They are so far away. They're like foreign countries and foreign times to me. That's just where I am. So I do want to briefly go over them just because where I am right now, I do want to go over the steps that it took for me to get here, because one of the last steps is very pertinent to how I got here. And I'm actually writing kind of a very short book about it called Sexual Healing. But I'm just going to give you a very brief overview. I don't want to go into gory details. So this episode, here's my warning. This is an R-rated episode. I would strongly advise that this is not an episode for children, and it is probably not an episode for members of my family who have disowned me, and friends who may feel uncomfortable knowing this about me. I find that when I have talked to people in the past about this subject, it makes people sometimes very, very uncomfortable. And a lot of times, because they can't deal with it, they turn away from me. And that's fine. So I'm just going to, excuse me, as I said, because I'm so over it, and I've had just such great therapy recently, I'm just going to just briefly kind of just jump in and run through it. I am, as I mentioned earlier in one of the previous episodes, the second episode, I believe. I don't remember it. I said I was kind of like, and I will be using expletives in this. I kind of hit the trifecta of fuck-ups very early on in my life. So I was born into a transient military family. So that's kind of strike one. Only because when you are very, very transient in the military, it has just a multitude of benefits. with it. You get to study so many different cultures and move lots of different places and learn so many different things about so many different kinds of people. And you get to experience so many different things. And that part of it is great. You really get your eyes opened about so many different things. One of the drawbacks is that you learn very early on that when you say goodbye to people, it's goodbye. And so in a lot of my relationships, like my marriages and romantic relationships, when I say goodbye, it's goodbye. I don't even look back. I cut it off, and that's it. And that feels really cold. And sometimes I look back and I'm thinking, how can you do that? How can you just that's it? But that's what I do. I'm not one of the women that thinks pausing just for a moment, getting a message. Okay, hopefully that won't be too much of a disruption, but that was somebody important that I needed to answer. So anyway, I'm not one of those women that clings and kind of tries to revive a broken relationship and chases after the man. I just break it off, let it go. That's it. So that is kind of weird, but the other thing is, and I have been back in touch with people, that I knew back in my earlier days, not relationships, but old friends and from old bases and, childhood friends and high school friends and stuff. Sorry. But, so that was strike one, is the transiency and the just, the ability to just let go. Strike two was I was sexually abused. There was incest in my family. And strike three was there was alcoholism in the family. So very early on, I actually started experimenting with alcohol and cigarettes when I was 11. Some of my girlfriends and I on the base would hit up, my favorite was peach schnapps, and we would get into the parents' liquor cabinets and have a few hits before school, and we'd take a few drags. Of course, we didn't inhale at that point, but we would take a few hits before school at 11. And it didn't get serious until later, but by 16 or 17, I was hitting the bottle, and I was smoking and inhaling, and it wasn't long after before the pot started and the drugs. So I should mention I was an NCO daughter, and that is a world apart from officers' kids. They had an entirely different life than NCO, non-commissioned officers' kids. So anyway, and because of the person who was an alcoholic in my family, and because I was the oldest daughter, I kind of began to fill in. And by the way, this person is no longer an alcoholic, but I kind of took her role, and it was a very unhealthy dynamic in the household. So it was a very fucked up dynamic. And so, like I said, today doesn't mean anything, but it did lead to the classic textbook symptoms of that dynamic are promiscuity. I mean, I had very promiscuous teen years and, late bedwetting, UTIs, things of that nature, experimenting not only with looking for a male figure, looking for someone to control me, looking for strong male figures to control me, and but also self-medicating and anxiety and panic, which I suffered. Now, back in the 60s and 70s, that wasn't really a thing yet. So I remember when we were living in Mississippi, and I remember coming in one day and telling my parents I'm having a heart attack because my heart was racing and my palms were sweaty and I couldn't breathe. And they just laughed at me. I'm pretty sure they were both 3 sheets to the wind, and they just laughed. And when this would happen, I would go and pull out my little white Bible, and I would read from Matthew. I don't know why it was Matthew. I always related to Matthew. He was just a very kindred spirit in my eyes. And I would read from the Bible and eventually fall asleep, calm down and fall asleep. And my teenage years were pretty rocky. I had that promiscuity. And because I went to 5 high schools in the 4 years of high school, I never had a chance to find my niche. I was one of those, I was always National Honor Society, so I had the brains. And, but I never had time to be known as a theater girl or a band girl or an athlete, or there was no continuity. So I didn't have a posse, or people didn't know me for anything. And so you just kind of jumped in. So I was a freak. That's what they called us back then. I was a freak. And even though I would join in once in a while with the, I remember being really good at the balance beam and gym and things like that, because I was very wiry. I mean, I was, when I graduated, I was 5'7" and 125 pounds, mostly boobs. And, but I remember one year I joined the science club, the math club, the chess club. And then I would go out and smoke a joint. So, I mean, I really was a freak and hung out with the fringes. I would have this broad spectrum of friends. I remember when I was in North Carolina, and this was when I was a junior, and I had friends that were very, very geeky. I had a girl that was, I know she's got to be a senator now. I mean, she was, Carolyn Carpenter was her name. She was the only child and very, very well-to-do parents. And she would invite me up on weekends to her place. And I'm like, oh my gosh, who lives like this? And, but she was very political and very intelligent. And then I hung out with the dregs, and we would party naked in the woods and smoke grapevine and drink White Lightning out of quart bottles. And that was the town that I also went streaking through a Pizza Hut in. So go figure. But these are some of the cherished memories of growing up the way I did. And as I said, even though there was a lot of sexual trauma, there were rapes, there was sex with people I didn't even know their name, there was sex under the influence. Doesn't matter. Because recently I have had a sexual healing, and I will tell you about that in the next episode. So I have to sign off now because it's going to be too many gigabytes to download. So this is Becky signing off. Peace and love.